historic mass rape trial that's drawing to its conclusion. And at the centre of it, a 72-year-old mother and grandmother, Gisèle Pelicot. Her husband of 50 years is accused of drugging her into unconsciousness and then over almost a decade, allowing at least 50 men, strangers recruited online, into the house where they allegedly raped her while being filmed by the husband himself. In his first British broadcast interview, Gisèle Pelicot's lawyer, speaking with his client's blessing, has told Newsnight about the impact the case has had on Mrs. Pelicot. Victoria Derbyshire met Stéphane Babonneau at his law firm in Paris.
I think that there is a moment of disbelief for everyone who heard about this story the first time. How is this even possible that first someone would want to do that to his wife? And how is it possible for the victim not to know what is happening to her? And the only way to answer this question is really by looking at the case, of course, but by listening to the victim herself. We were immediately convinced that this woman was telling the truth, that she was genuinely unaware of what was happening to her. And she explained to us how for 10 years she's been trying to understand what was happening to her by consulting with doctors, by talking with her family, with her environment, and no one was able to find any explanation.
What were your fears, your concerns before telling Gisèle Pelicot exactly who this involved, what it involved, and the scale of it over almost a decade?
Well, that she could have a nervous breakdown, of course, because we were all very worried that a human being who has been exposed to hundreds of extreme sexual abuse without knowing that, after being told what had happened to her, she couldn't accept to watch the videos or even to continue the discussion about the extent of the rapes, how many, how long, how, who. She wasn't ready for that. It took her almost 3 years to be able to accept to have this very straightforward conversation about what was in the case, and she accepted that because at that time she was already thinking to allow the public into the courtroom. So she felt that she needed to be fully aware and fully informed of the case, even if, as many others, she would have preferred to live without knowing if it was possible, but it wasn't.
And she, as you say, it took her 4 years to watch the footage, the videos that her husband had filmed. How did she respond? How did she deal with what she was viewing?
She felt extremely humiliated by what she was seeing, extremely humiliated. She felt ashamed to listen to her snoring on the videos, ashamed of see herself in positions that were completely the opposite of who she was. And she was extremely shocked of seeing herself becoming an object. She used very strong words. They're using me as a trash bag. They're using me as an object. They're using me not as a human being. And I think that this achieved to help her deciding that she wanted an open trial, public trial, because she felt that it was important that people understood what happened to her.
Let's talk about Madame Pelicot's decision that she didn't want to be anonymous, that she wanted to waive her right to anonymity and open up the case to journalists and to members of the public. Why was that important to her?
She realized that it wouldn't be possible to understand the extent of what happened, and that this story could be useful to others. And that in order to ensure that this would not happen again to anyone, it was important for the public to know how this could happen.
What kind of men are on trial here?
We heard many times that they are ordinary men. They're ordinary men because they're well-integrated men for most of them. They have jobs, families, friends, but they're not ordinary in the choices they made, because they made some very particular choices that not all men would have done. And they have personal responsibility over these choices. So what this trial is trying to achieve is to understand how ordinary men could find themselves in this position. What has led to this horrendous story?
Most evenings after the trial, women line up to applaud Madame Pelicot out of court. And you have told me Madame Pelicot has received hundreds and hundreds of letters. You've got just a small batch today which have arrived at your offices here in Paris. What effect is that having on her?
She has mixed feelings about that. The first feeling is an immense sense of gratitude for these women, because she never asked for it. She didn't expect for it to happen. She believed truly, because this is what we told her, that she would be by herself with, of course, the support of her legal team and her family members. But that would be all for the 4 months. And no one ever expected that she would receive some public support, this level of public attention. And then came another feeling, which is a feeling of responsibility. So she feels a lot of gratitude, because it helps her a lot to feel, because it's very complicated for her to, to put herself in this situation every day of the week for months, having to endure the videos, having to endure the questions, having to endure the explanations of the accused. She feels that somehow she's representing these people now, and she didn't choose for that, but it happened and she accepted it.
Gisèle Pelicot's lawyer speaking to the BBC.